Hi everyone, my name is Julia Arroyo, and today I'm going to be talking about the consulting services that I offer for Airbnb hosts. In particular, I'm going to be looking at the reviews left by Airbnb customers on listings, and I'm going to analyze them using natural language processing and sentiment analysis. So first I'm going to go over background information on the analysis and discuss the purpose of why this is so important. Next, I'm going to look at the specific data set that I used. And after that, I'll be looking at the methodology and presenting that in a top level view. Next, I'm going to talk about the results and the conclusions that came from my analysis. After that, I'll be making recommendations based on those, and then I'll be talking about the future work that I plan to do with this analysis and with my consulting services. So just as a background, if you're not familiar with Airbnb, it's actually a leading company for rental properties across the world. It's relatively new. It was only founded in 2008, but since then it's grown explosively, as you can see by some of these statistics on the right. There's more than 150 million users on Airbnb, and more than 2 million people stay in an Airbnb every night. There's over 7 million global Airbnb listings worldwide, and the reason why Airbnb has grown in popularity is because it's so user-friendly. It's available to use through a website or app, so it can be accessed on the go. And essentially anyone can rent or host a listing. Now with this mass amount of users, Airbnb is also generating a massive amount of data, and it collects a massive amount of data from the users and from the listers in particular. The problem is that this data is not fully being utilized by the users because there's a disconnect between the data that's available and the ability to effectively analyze it. And that's where I'm going to come in today. So my main question that I want to answer is, how can I provide consulting services to Airbnb hosts in order to uncover useful insights and make recommendations, focusing mainly on the reviews from renters like the ones shown below? So as you can see, every time a user stays in an Airbnb, after they check out, they have the option to give a review on the house and on the host. So there's different categories that they can rank, such as accuracy and communication. And then they also have the chance to leave their personal comment, like the one shown by Pascal below. Now, the actual data that I'm using for this analysis contains almost 400,000 records of textual data. And this data consists of reviews left by customers between September 2008 and May 2020. Now I'm sticking to Seattle, Washington for this analysis, and even though this seems small, Seattle contains 79 neighborhoods, over 4,000 hosts, and over 7,000 listings. So the first thing I wanted to do when exploring the data was try to figure out what languages these reviews were actually written in, because this will affect my analysis later on. In order to do this, I used a Python library, and as you can see by the frequency plot on the left, English is the overwhelming majority of the reviews. So as you can see, English has over 98, and French comes in second with 0.39%, or sorry, 0.39%. And so for this analysis, I'm only focusing on the English language. You can, if you're familiar with some other languages, you can consider looking at these as well. So next, I decided to make a word cloud with these English language reviews just to find out what were the most frequent words coming up in reviews. As you can see, some of them aren't super useful, like house, but something like arrival is important. The only problem is that because this is coming from just the most frequent comments, you're not actually getting any insight on what the users think about arrival in particular. So for example, arrival comes up a lot, but we're not really sure whether users like the arrival experience or dislike it. So in order to get more detail, we're going to be using the method of sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis is a natural language processing and text analysis technique, and it's aimed at discovering the underlying emotions behind words. So I'm using another Python package for this called Vadar, and what Vadar basically does is it looks at sentences or phrases and it classifies each word in those phrases as either positive, negative, or neutral. They're then assigned a score based on what percent positive, negative, or neutral the actual phrase falls into. Vadar also comes up with a compound score, which gives the overall sentiment of the sentence. So if it's greater than or equal to 0.05, then the sentence will be considered positive. If it's less than or equal to 0.05, it's considered negative. And if it's between those two values, the overall sentence or phrase is considered neutral. So as you can see on the bottom, those are just a few examples of some simple sentences that I ran. As you can see, they generate a negative score, a neutral score, positive, and compound, like mentioned above. And just to go over one of them, data mining is very fun. So it's 0% negative, it's 52.7% neutral, and it's 47.3 positive, giving it an overall compound score of 0.5563. Since this compound score is greater than or equal to 0.05, the sentence is considered positive. Just to get a feel of the overall sentiment of all of the comments, I decided to plot frequency plots for each sentiment as well as the compound score. And as you can see, overall there's mostly positive reviews, which kind of surprised me because I would expect people to comment on things when they're dissatisfied with it rather than when they're satisfied. But since Airbnb always offers users a chance to leave their comments, they're kind of prompted to leave a comment no matter what. I guess this would make sense that why there would be so many positives. So this pie chart tells the same story, just differently. As you can see, 44.47% of the comments were positive, around 35% were neutral, and around 20% were negative. Now I wanted to take a better look at what areas these sentiments were found in. So I plotted the sentiment compound scores along with the latitude and longitude of where that listing actually was. And as you can see, the lighter the circle, that means the more negative the comment is, and the darker, that means the more positive the comment was. And then the circle size indicates the number of reviews left in that area. So as you can see, this doesn't tell you much. It's not particularly useful for this analysis, but it could be useful for identifying some hubs. As you can see, I kind of left this in there because I think that for other analyses, this could be a super useful technique. So next what I did was I divided the positive comments from the negative comments, and I created new word charts and also frequency plots. So on the left, this word chart shows the top words. The bigger the word is, the more frequently it appeared. And on the right, the plot just shows the top 30 most frequent words used in the positive comments. So some of the words that stuck out to me, I listed above, were clean, location, space, neighborhood, downtown, quiet, and restaurants. So next I looked at the negative comments, which told a similar story. So on the left is the word cloud, on the right is the frequency plot again, and some of the words that stuck out to me were host, location, bed, clean, bathroom, parking, kitchen, and time. So some of the conclusions I came up with based on these comments. First, looking at the combination of the positive word cloud and also the frequency plots, I determined that renters like clean and comfortable homes. This is something they really value. Another thing that they value are location and neighborhood. So these are important to the renter, and they especially like homes that are close to downtown and the restaurants. If those things are only a block away or a quick ride or Uber away, that would be ideal. I also noticed Madrona was a big word on my word cloud, and when I looked it up, it's one of the neighborhoods in Seattle. So that's pretty interesting. Madrona must be a neighborhood that renters like a lot. So the next conclusion I made were that aesthetics of the home play a big role. Renters liked homes that were described as beautiful, cute, gorgeous, and renovated. They also noticed details such as fireplaces, doors, bamboo, etc. So lastly, this kind of surprised me, but I found out that properties that cater to families might actually result in positive comments, especially for renters with young babies or children. I found comments such as nursery, playground. I also found newborn, daughter, children, etc. So then looking at the negative comments and making some inferences based on that, host was actually a really frequent word. So that tells me that the host can play a big role in whether the renters like the house or not. It's also important that the host should be polite and have good communication. So renters complain the most about the bed, bathroom, parking, and kitchen, and they commented on cleanliness a lot. So just as users were commenting positively on cleanliness, they were also commenting negatively on cleanliness. So that just kind of shows the importance and how much a user notices that. I noticed that apartments were talked about more in the negative comments, as well as the word space in general and some other space related topics such as basement and backyard. Wallingford was a word mentioned a lot in negative comments, and that's also a neighborhood in Seattle. So some recommendations that I would make to Airbnb hosts: if they don't know where to rent a property, I would recommend looking at properties in centrally located areas, possibly Madrona, and maybe avoid areas such as Wallingford. I would say to take the time to make sure a home is very clean or hire a cleaning service before the guests occupy the home, because as you can see, cleanliness is something that customers really value and notice. Next, I would say keep open communication with the renters and always answer when contacted in a timely manner. You don't want the people renting your house to leave a negative review about the host, because that will look bad on you, and that's something that they're likely to do if they have a negative experience with you. So next, I would say, if it's possible, have some amenities that cater towards family. You can provide some toys in the house, a high chair, nursery, etc. You can consider renting a property close to a playground or in a family-friendly neighborhood. If possible, I would consider renting a spacious home, and if you can't, then I would do things to make the house seem more spacious, such as decluttering. And lastly, I would keep up with the overall aesthetics of the place and invest in some details that would really stand out to the customer, such as a fireplace. So some future work that I would like to do is expanding the data set to cover more locations in order to be able to recommend locations on a greater scale. Now, if a customer were to come to me and say that they want to specifically rent in Seattle, then I would probably just stick to Seattle data because that's the competition for them. But if a host comes to me and they're just looking for a property in general, and maybe they're open to a few different locations, I would check out those locations, see what's most popular, see what's most positively commented on or negatively commented on. If there's a certain area where there's just a way more positive comments than negative comments, I would maybe suggest that area to them. So something else I would like to provide for customers are being able to dive deeper into what people are specifically commenting on based on what the customer has in mind. So some examples would be if a customer's concerned about like their bathroom or location or parking, I can filter the comments to see only comments that have bathroom in it, for example. And then I can get the sentiment analysis on that to figure out what customers specifically like and dislike about the bathrooms. And then I'd be able to guide the host and recommend them on what to do. Next, a values-focused thinking approach. I think this is more personal, and when you have a customer who's willing to come to you and maybe have a meeting and talk about what they're specifically interested in, because maybe they're only interested in location or they're only interested in size of the house, this would be able to guide my analysis and make it more specific towards what they're looking for. Something else I could look at is how comments change over time, or maybe how they're affected by events, such as the pandemic that's going on right now. Maybe some customers are getting hit really hard by the pandemic, and so they're trying to see what specifically about the house they can change to make it more marketable towards this during this time. Lastly, I would like to provide customers with continued analysis in order to update the reviewer's sentiment and also monitor the progress. So if I recommend something for a host to do, I would like to follow up and provide continued analysis to see if my recommendations worked well for them and how well they worked, and be able to keep tweaking things to make them more and more successful. So thank you for your time, and I hope you're considering my consulting services when it comes to Airbnbs.